The salvage ship. Bright dawn drifted silently through the Kepler nebula, its sensors scanning for anything valuable among the cosmic debris. Captain Do-hyun sat in his command chair, watching the endless display of stars and gas clouds through the main screen. His crew had been searching for 3 days without finding anything worth their time. "Captain," called out Hyejin from her station at the sensor array. "I'm picking up something strange. There's a ship out there, but it's not moving." Do-hyun leaned forward. "How big?" "Small. Maybe a personal transport or escape pod. But the metal readings are odd. It's not made from any material in our database." "Set a course," Do-hyun ordered. "Let's take a look." The bright dawn changed direction, moving toward the mysterious object. As they got closer, the main screen showed a dark, twisted piece of metal floating in space. It looked like it had been through hell. Burn marks covered its surface, and several sections were completely destroyed. "That thing looks ancient," said Taeho, the ship's engineer. He was studying the readings on his tablet. "The damage patterns are strange too. This wasn't destroyed in a normal space battle." Sunmi, the medical officer, joined them on the bridge. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who never missed anything important. "Are we going aboard?" "If it's safe," Do-hyun replied. "Scan for life signs." Hyejin worked at her console for several minutes. "I'm getting weak readings. Something alive in there, but barely. The ship's life support is almost gone." Do-hyun made his decision quickly. "Suit up. We're going over. Sunmi, bring your medical kit. Taeho, bring cutting tools in case we need to break through damaged doors." 20 minutes later, the three of them floated through space toward the derelict ship. Their magnetic boots clanked against the hull as they found an airlock that still seemed to work. Taeho connected his tools to the door controls. "Atmosphere inside is thin but breathable," he reported. "Temperature is just above freezing." The airlock opened with a grinding sound. Inside, emergency lights flickered weakly, casting strange shadows on the walls. The ship was small, just a few rooms connected by narrow corridors. Everything was covered in a thin layer of frost. "This way," Sunmi said, following her medical scanner. "The life sign is coming from the back section." They moved carefully through the ship. The walls were covered with writing in a language none of them recognized. Strange symbols were carved deep into the metal, as if someone had spent a long time making them by hand. "Look at this," Taeho whispered, pointing to one of the walls. "These aren't decorations. Someone was counting something. Days, maybe? There are thousands of marks here." They found the source of the life signs in what looked like a medical bay. A cryopod sat in the center of the room, its clear cover cracked but still sealed. Inside was a man who looked human, but something was wrong with him. His skin was pale, almost gray, and covered with scars that formed strange patterns. "Get him back to our ship," Sunmi ordered. "Fast, this pod is failing." Moving the unconscious man was difficult. He was heavier than he looked, and his body felt strange under their hands. His bones seemed thicker than normal, and there were hard bumps under his skin that shouldn't be there. Back on the bright dawn, they placed him in the medical bay. Sunmi immediately began running tests while Do-hyun and Taeho watched. The man's vital signs were weak but steady. "This is impossible," Sunmi muttered as she looked at her scanner readings. "His bone density is 3 times normal. His muscle mass is enhanced beyond anything I've ever seen. And look at this." She pointed to the man's back, where a series of metal ports were embedded along his spine. They were crude and roughly made, like someone had installed them without proper medical equipment. "Those are neural connections," Taeho said, "but they're primitive, like someone made them by hand." Sunmi continued her examination. "His blood chemistry is completely unknown. There are synthetic compounds mixed with his natural blood. His cellular structure shows signs of extreme age, but also recent healing. It's like his body has been rebuilt multiple times." The medical bay's AI system, Jinwoo, began running its own scans. The computer's voice was calm and mechanical. "Patient shows unknown genetic markers. Cross-referencing with all known species databases. No matches found." Do-hyun frowned. "No matches at all?" That's impossible. Every known intelligent species is in that database. I'm running deeper scans, Jinwoo replied. This may take some time. Sunmi worked through the night, trying to understand what she was looking at. The man's injuries told a story of incredible suffering. His ribs had been broken and healed multiple times. His skull showed evidence of major trauma that had somehow been repaired. Most disturbing were the scars on his chest and arms, which formed geometric patterns that looked almost ritualistic. It's like someone did this to him on purpose, she told Do-hyun the next morning. These aren't battle wounds or accidents. Someone systematically modified his body. The man's heart rate never changed even during painful procedures. His brain activity was unlike anything in Sunmi's medical training. Most strange of all, his body seemed to be healing itself even while unconscious. Small cuts from the medical tests closed within hours. On the second day, Jinwoo made an announcement that surprised everyone. I am accessing historical databases that require special clearance. This patient's genetic and cellular markers have triggered automated research protocols. What kind of protocols? Do-hyun asked. I am not authorized to share that information until the research is complete, Jinwoo replied. Taeho had been studying the derelict ship they had found the man in. Captain, you need to see this. That ship isn't just old, it's ancient. The metal composition, the manufacturing techniques, even the basic design principles are from technologies we haven't used in thousands of years. How many thousands? Do-hyun asked. Maybe 3,000 years? Maybe more. Sunmi looked up from her patient. That's impossible. No one lives that long, even in cryosleep. But the evidence was right there in front of them. An ancient ship, carrying a man whose body had been modified in ways that defied medical understanding, floating in space where no one should have been able to survive. And now their AI was accessing classified historical records to try to identify him. On the third day, the man's eyes opened. They were brown and completely human, but filled with a pain and knowledge that seemed older than the stars themselves. He tried to speak, but the sounds he made were in a language they're universal. Translators couldn't understand. Sunmi held a cup of water to his lips and he drank gratefully. When he tried to sit up, his movements were careful and controlled, like someone who had learned to live with constant pain. He looked around the medical bay with eyes that took in every detail, every possible threat or escape route. Who are you? Sunmi asked gently. The man's mouth moved, and this time the translator caught a few words. Kang Min, he said. Then more words that made no sense. Last witness. They must. No. His eyes closed again, and he fell back into unconsciousness. But now they had a name, and the beginning of a mystery that would change everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. Kangmin woke up slowly, his eyes moving carefully around the medical bay before settling on Sunmi's face. She was sitting beside his bed, holding a tablet and watching his vital signs. When he tried to speak, the words came out harsh and broken. Water, he managed to say, and this time the translator worked perfectly. Sunmi helped him drink. His hands shook, but not from weakness. They shook like someone who had learned to expect danger at any moment. What is your name? She asked gently. Kang Min, he replied. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in a very long time. How long? How long what? How long was I sleeping? Sunmi didn't know how to answer that. We don't know. We found you in an old ship, a very old ship. Kang Min tried to sit up, and Sunmi saw the muscles in his arms and shoulders move in ways that weren't natural. They were too defined, too powerful for a normal human body. When he moved, she could see the metal ports along his spine flex and adjust. Where am I? He asked. On a salvage ship called the Bright Dawn. I'm Sunmi, the medical officer. Kang Min's eyes swept the room again, taking in every detail. Your technology, it's advanced, more advanced than... He stopped talking and closed his eyes as if remembering something painful. Wu Jin, the ship's linguist, entered the medical bay carrying a language analysis device. He was excited about the translation problem. The words you were speaking, when you first woke up, he said, they're from a dead language, something that hasn't been used in thousands of years. Dead. Kang Min repeated softly. Yes. Everything is dead. Sunmi ran more medical scans while Wu Jin worked on the language problem. What she found made no sense. Kang Min's skeleton wasn't just dense, it was reinforced with synthetic materials that had been woven into his natural bone structure. His muscles contained artificial fibers that made him incredibly strong. His nervous system had been enhanced with tiny machines that helped his reflexes work faster than any normal person's. "Who did this to you?" she asked. "We did it to ourselves," Kang Min replied. "We had to. There was no choice." "We?" But Kang Min didn't answer. He was staring at the ceiling, lost in memories that Sunmi couldn't imagine. Tae Ho came to visit later. That day, curious about Kang Min's cybernetic implants. When he entered the medical bay, Kang Min's reaction was instant and violent. He rolled off the bed and crouched in the corner, his hands raised in a fighting position that looked deadly. "Stay back," he shouted. "Don't come closer." It took Sunmi and 2 security guards to calm him down. Even then, Kang Min watched Tae Ho with suspicious eyes. "I'm not going to hurt you," Tae Ho said. "I just wanted to look at your implants. I'm an engineer." "Engineer," Kang Min repeated. "They sent engineers first, always engineers." "Who sent engineers?" But again, Kang Min wouldn't answer. Jin Woo, the medical AI, had been running scans and research for 3 days straight. The computer's processing power was working at maximum capacity, searching through databases that most people didn't even know existed. Patient identification remains impossible using standard databases, Jin Woo announced. "I am now accessing restricted historical archives. This requires special authorization." Captain Do-hyun frowned. "What kind of special authorization?" "The kind that is automatically granted when certain genetic markers are detected," Jin Woo replied. "This patient carries biological signatures that trigger ancient protocols." "Ancient protocols for what?" "I am still researching, please be patient." Hae Jin, the data analyst, had been watching Jin Woo's unusual behavior. She noticed that the AI was accessing memory banks that had been sealed for centuries. The computer was digging deeper into historical records than anyone had ever done before. "It's looking for something specific," she told Do-hyun. "But I can't figure out what. The search terms it's using are classified above my security level." Meanwhile, Sunmi continued working with Kang Min, trying to understand his medical condition. His body was a puzzle that became more complex the more she studied it. "These modifications," she said, pointing to his enhanced muscles. "They're designed for survival in extreme conditions. High gravity, low oxygen, toxic atmosphere. Why would someone do this to themselves?" Kang Min looked at her for a long time before answering. "Because the alternative was death." "Death from what?" "From them. From the ones who wanted us all gone." Sunmi felt a chill run down her spine. "Who wanted you gone?" "Everyone," Kang Min said simply. "The entire galaxy." That night, Kang Min had nightmares. Sunmi heard him screaming and rushed to the medical bay. He was still asleep, but his body was thrashing violently. The medical monitors showed his heart rate and brain activity spiking to dangerous levels. "Wake up!" she called, but he didn't respond. In his sleep, he was speaking that ancient language again, and this time the translator was working better. "They're coming," he was saying. "Hide the children. Seal the bunkers. They're burning everything. Everything is burning." Sunmi managed to wake him up and he sat up gasping. His whole body was covered in sweat and his hands were shaking. "It was just a dream," she said. "No," Kang Min replied. "It was a memory. It's always a memory." The next day, Jin Woo made an announcement that changed everything. The AI's voice was different, more formal, as if it was reading from an official report. "Deep archive search complete. Patient genetic markers have been identified. Classification: Homo sapiens terra. Warning: patient exhibits modifications consistent with terminal survival adaptation protocol." The medical bay fell silent. Everyone knew what those words meant, even though they couldn't believe them. "Terra?" Sunmi whispered. "You mean Earth?" "Affirmative. Patient is identified as human. Species designation, extinct. Last verified survivors died approximately 3,200 years ago. Do-hyun stared at Kang Min, who was sitting quietly on the medical bed. That's impossible. Humans have been extinct for thousands of years. Apparently not all of them, Kang Min said quietly. But Earth was destroyed, Taeho protested. Everyone knows that. The humans destroyed their own planet in a war. Kang Min's eyes grew hard. Is that what they told you? That we destroyed ourselves? Didn't you? No, Kang Min said, and his voice carried the weight of terrible truth. We were murdered. Jinwoo continued its report. Terminal Survival Adaptation Protocol was a theoretical emergency procedure designed for species facing complete extinction. Subjects would undergo extreme physical modification to survive in hostile environments for extended periods. The goal was preservation of witnesses and genetic material. Sunmi looked at Kang Min's scars and implants with new understanding. You were modified to survive the death of your world. I was modified to remember it, Kang Min corrected. To carry the truth long enough to tell someone who would listen. What truth? Kang Min met her eyes and she saw pain that had lasted for thousands of years. The truth about what really happened to humanity. The truth about who killed us all. Outside the medical bay, alarms began to sound. Captain Do-hyun's voice came over the ship's communication system. All hands, prepare for incoming vessels. We have a fleet approaching at high speed. They're demanding to board our ship immediately. Kang Min heard the announcement and smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. They know, he said. They know I'm alive. Who knows? The ones who thought they had killed us all. Through the medical bay's small window, Sunmi could see lights approaching in the darkness of space. A lot of lights. Whatever was coming, it was big, and it was coming fast. What do they want? She asked. Kang Min closed his eyes. To finish what they started 3,000 years ago. The fleet that surrounded the bright dawn was massive. 6 warships formed a perfect circle around the small salvage vessel, their weapons powered but not yet targeting. Captain Do-hyun stood on his bridge, watching the display screens with growing worry. This is Admiral Park of the Galactic Fleet, came a voice over the communication system. We are implementing Emergency Protocol 7, prepare for immediate boarding, do not resist. Do-hyun had never heard of Emergency Protocol 7. Admiral, this is Captain Do-hyun. What's the nature of this emergency? We're just a salvage ship. You have recovered biological material that requires immediate containment, Admiral Park replied. Stand by for boarding teams. In the medical bay, Kang Min listened to the conversation through the ship's communication system. His face showed no surprise, only the tired look of someone who had expected this moment for a very long time. They came faster than I thought, he told Sunmi. I hoped we would have more time. Time for what? Time for you to understand what you found. The boarding teams arrived within the hour. They wore full environmental suits and carried scanning equipment that Sunmi had never seen before. Leading them was a woman who introduced herself as Dr. Yeon-soo and a military officer called Commander Jae-sung. Dr. Yeon-soo went straight to the medical bay where Kang Min waited calmly. She ran her scanner over him several times, checking the readings against a device she carried. Confirmed, she said to Commander Jae-sung. Genetic markers match the archive samples. Neural implant configuration consistent with Terminal Survival Adaptation Protocol. This is authentic. Authentic what? Sunmi demanded. What's going on here? Dr. Yeon-soo looked at her with serious eyes. You've found something that was supposed to be impossible. A living human being. We know that already, Do-hyun said. Jinwoo identified him as human yesterday. You don't understand, Commander Jae-sung replied. Humans have been extinct for over 3,000 years. Finding a living one is like finding a living dinosaur. It changes everything we know about galactic history. Dr. Yeon-soo connected her advanced equipment to Jinwoo's systems. I'm uploading classified historical databases. Your AI will now have access to information that has been sealed since the end of the human wars. Jinwoo's voice changed as the new data flowed into its systems. processing historical archives, cross-referencing patient data with human extinction, event records, analysis in progress. Kang Min watched all of this calmly. "They're trying to decide whether to kill me or study me," he said quietly to Sunmi. "Kill you? Why would they want to kill you?" "Because I know what really happened. And that knowledge is dangerous to the people who run the galaxy now." Dr. Yan-Su heard him and turned around. "We're not going to kill you. We're trying to understand how you survived." "I survived because my people made sure I would survive," Kang Min replied. "They turned me into a living witness to their murder." "Murder?" Commander Jae-sung stepped forward. "According to all historical records, humanity destroyed itself in a civil war. They made their homeworld uninhabitable and died out naturally." Kang Min laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "Is that what you teach your children? That we committed suicide?" Jinwoo's analysis completed with a series of electronic sounds. Historical database integration complete. New information conflicts with standard historical records. Discrepancies detected in official accounts of human extinction event. "What kind of discrepancies?" Dr. Yan-Su asked. "Official records state that humans destroyed themselves through internal warfare. However, classified military archives indicate systematic extermination campaign conducted by Valkyrian Empire forces. Duration, 47 years. Result, complete elimination of human population." The medical bay fell silent. Even Kang Min looked surprised that the truth was coming out so easily. Commander Jae-sung checked his communication device. "These archives have been sealed for security reasons. This information is not supposed to be accessible." "It's accessible to me," Jinwoo replied, "because this patient carries genetic markers that automatically unlock these files. His DNA contains authorization codes that were implanted by human scientists during the final years of their civilization." Dr. Yan-Su stared at Kang Min with new understanding. "Your people planned this. They knew someone would find you eventually, and they made sure you would be believed." "They did more than that," Kang Min said. He rolled over and showed them his back, where the metal ports were embedded along his spine. "These aren't just medical implants, they're data storage devices." "Data storage?" Sunmi asked. "Everything my people wanted preserved is stored in my nervous system. Historical records, scientific knowledge, cultural information, genetic samples. I'm not just a witness, I'm a living library." Dr. Yan-Su connected a cable to one of Kang Min's neural ports. Her scanner immediately began displaying massive amounts of information. "This is incredible. Terabytes of data, stored in biological neural networks." Commander Jae-sung was reading reports on his communication device. "I'm getting orders from High Command. This situation is now classified at the highest levels. No one is allowed to leave this ship until we decide how to handle this information." "Handle it how?" Do-hyun asked. "That depends on what we find in his memories." Dr. Yun-Soo worked through the night, carefully extracting data from Kang Min's neural implants. What she found painted a picture of humanity's final years that was completely different from the official history. Humans hadn't destroyed themselves. They had been the most advanced species in the galaxy, with technology and social systems that threatened the Valkyrian Empire's control. The Empire had decided that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to live. The war hadn't been a civil conflict. It had been genocide, carried out systematically over nearly 50 years. Human colonies were destroyed one by one. Their homeworld was poisoned and bombarded until it could no longer support life. The survivors were hunted down and eliminated. But some humans had seen what was coming. In underground laboratories, they had worked frantically to preserve their species in any way possible. They had selected volunteers like Kang Min and modified their bodies to survive in the toxic ruins of their world. They had implanted their memories with the true history of what had happened. The modifications weren't torture, Sunmi realized as she read the data. They were gifts. Your people gave you everything they could to make sure you would survive, long enough to tell their story. Kang Min nodded. Every scar, every implant, every enhanced muscle fiber was designed to keep me alive for this moment, so that someone would finally know the truth about what the Empire did to us. Commander Jae-sung received another communication, and his face grew pale. Fleet Admiral Minho is coming personally. He's bringing the full authority of the Galactic Council. The Galactic Council, Kang Min repeated, built on the bones of my people. Do they know? Know what? That their perfect peaceful civilization exists because an entire species was murdered to create it. Dr. Yeon-soo looked up from her data analysis. According to these records, the current galactic government is directly descended from the Yao, Valkyrian Empire. The same people who ordered humanity's extinction are the ancestors of today's leaders. Not the same people, Commander Jae-sung corrected. That was 3,000 years ago. Everyone involved is long dead. The system is the same, Kang Min said. The power structure is the same. The lies they told to justify our murder are still the foundation of their authority. Sunmi sat down heavily. The weight of what they had discovered was enormous. What happens now? Dr. Yeon-soo packed up her equipment. Now we wait for Fleet Admiral Minho to decide what to do with the most dangerous man in the galaxy. Dangerous? Do-hyun asked. He's just one person. He's not just one person, Dr. Yeon-soo replied. He's the living proof that our entire civilization was built on a lie. If this information becomes public, it could destabilize the government of every world in the galaxy. Outside the ship, more vessels were arriving. Sunmi could see them through the medical bay window, dozens of ships forming a massive blockade around their small salvage vessel. Kang Min saw them too. They're afraid, he said quietly. After 3,000 years, they're still afraid of what one human might say. He closed his eyes, and for the first time since waking up, he smiled peacefully. Good. They should be afraid, because I'm not just carrying the memory of my people's death. I'm carrying the proof of their courage, their intelligence, and their refusal to surrender even when facing impossible odds. What will you do? Sunmi asked. Kang Min opened his eyes and looked at her with determination that had survived for thousands of years. What my people made me to do. Tell the truth. No matter what it costs. Fleet Admiral Minho arrived in a ship so large it blocked out the stars. The bright dawn looked like a tiny insect next to the massive command vessel that docked with it. When Minho stepped aboard, he brought with him a team of specialists. That included historians, genetic analysts, and neural interface experts. Minho was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much of the galaxy's darker secrets. He looked at Kang Min for a long time before speaking. So you're the impossible man, he said finally, the human who refuses to be extinct. I'm what's left, Kang Min replied. What my people made sure would survive. And what exactly did they make sure would survive? The truth, Minho nodded slowly. That's what I was afraid of. Dr. So Young, the team's xenoarchaeologist, began a detailed examination of Kang Min's genetic structure, while technician Dong Hyun worked on extracting more data from his neural implants. The process took hours, and Kang Min endured it all without complaint. The genetic markers are authentic, Dr. So Young announced. But there's something else. His DNA has been deliberately altered to carry specific information, molecular-level data storage embedded in his chromosomes. What kind of information? Minho asked. Coordinates, star maps, and something else. Authorization codes for accessing restricted archives that I didn't even know existed. Dong Hyun was having more success with the neural interfaces. Admiral, you need to see this. The data in his implants isn't just historical records. It's evidence, documentation of specific military operations, orders from Valkyrian commanders, records of population elimination procedures. Minho studied the data flowing across Dong Hyun's screens. His face grew darker with each file that appeared. These are war crimes records. Not war crimes, Kang Min corrected. Genocide documentation. My people knew that someday someone would need proof of what really happened. They made sure I could provide that proof. Dr. So Young made another discovery while analyzing Kang Min's blood samples. Admiral, his cellular structure contains artificial markers that match samples in the deepest archive vaults. These markers were placed there by human scientists as a fail-safe identification system. Fail-safe for what? For making sure that if any human ever survived, they could prove their identity and access information that was hidden specifically for them. Minho sat down heavily. They planned this. Even while they were being exterminated, they planned for this exact moment. They were smart, Kangmin said simply. Smarter than the people who tried to erase us. They knew that truth has a way of surviving even when everything else dies. Donghyun continued extracting memories from Kangmin's neural implants, displaying them on screens throughout the medical bay. What they saw was horrifying and heartbreaking. Underground cities where the last humans lived like animals, hiding from the toxic atmosphere that had once been breathable air, children being subjected to painful medical procedures because unmodified humans could no longer survive on their poisoned homeworld. Scientists working desperately to preserve their species' knowledge while explosions shook the ground above their heads. But the memories also showed something else. They showed humans who refused to give up. Families who stayed together even as their world died around them. Researchers who continued their work even when they knew they wouldn't live to see it completed. Soldiers who fought impossible battles to buy time for evacuation ships that might never come. They weren't just surviving, Sunmi realized as she watched the memories. They were documenting everything. Every atrocity, every act of courage, every moment of their civilization's final days. Because they knew that someday, someone would need to know, Kangmin said. Someone would need to understand what really happened during those final years. One memory showed a human woman, a scientist working frantically in a laboratory while the ceiling shook from bombardment above. She was preparing the neural implants that would eventually be installed in Kangmin's spine. The galaxy must know, she was saying as she worked. They must know that we didn't destroy ourselves. They must know that we were murdered for refusing to surrender our freedom. Another memory showed the moment when Kangmin volunteered for the modification procedure. He had been young then, maybe 20 years old, and terrified. But he had stepped forward anyway. I'll carry it, he had said. I'll carry the truth for as long as it takes. The older Kangmin, lying on the medical bed 3,000 years later, watched his younger self make that promise. I kept my word, he said quietly. Dr. So Young discovered something else in the genetic analysis. His DNA contains more than just human genetic material. There are samples from other species that were allies of humanity during the final war. Other species fought with humans? Commander Jae-sung asked. According to these records, yes. Several. Smaller civilizations tried to help humanity resist the Valkyrian Empire. They were all eliminated as well. Minho reviewed the evidence for hours, cross-referencing it with classified archives that even most fleet commanders didn't know existed. What he found confirmed everything that Kangmin's memories contained. It's all true, he announced finally. The official history is a complete fabrication. Humanity was systematically exterminated by the Valkyrian Empire because they refused to submit to imperial rule. And our current government? Dr. Yansu asked. Is the direct descendant of that empire. The peaceful democratic civilization we're all so proud of exists because an entire species and their allies were murdered to make room for it. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. The galaxy they lived in, the civilization they served was built on the foundation of genocide. Kangmin broke the silence. Now you know what I've been carrying all these years. The weight of 3,000 years of lies. Minho made a decision that would change galactic history. We're going to make this public. Admiral, Commander Jae-sung protested. If this information becomes known, it could cause massive social upheaval. Governments could fall. There could be wars. There should be wars, Minho replied. People should be angry when they learn that their entire civilization is built on a lie. But the stability of the galaxy is less important than the truth, Minho said firmly. This man has carried the burden of his people's memory for 3,000 years. The least we can do is make sure their story is finally told. Dr. So Young found one final piece of evidence in Kangmin's genetic code. Admiral, there's something else. His DNA contains viable genetic material from multiple human populations. With modern cloning technology, it might be possible to restore the human species. Kang Min shook his head. No, my people are gone. Let them rest in peace. What matters is that their story survives, not their bodies. But you could have children, Sunmi said. You could rebuild your species. I'm not the last human because I survived, Kang Min explained. I'm the last human because my people chose me to speak for them after they were gone. That's a different responsibility. Minho understood. You're not here to restart humanity. You're here to make sure they're remembered correctly. Exactly. Outside, the ship, communication signals were flying between the fleet vessels. Word of the discovery was spreading through the highest levels of galactic government, causing panic and emergency meetings on a dozen different worlds. They're going to try to suppress this, Dong Hyun warned as he monitored the communications. Let them try, Minho said. The truth is already out there now. It's in multiple databases stored on multiple ships, backed up on multiple worlds. They can't erase it again. Kang Min smiled for the first time since waking up. It was a real smile, full of satisfaction and peace. My people would be proud. They gambled everything on the hope that someday someone would listen to their story. Someone did. Sunmi sat beside him. What happens to you now? Now I do what I was made to do. I tell everyone who will listen about the humans who refused to surrender, even when the entire galaxy wanted them dead. I make sure the galaxy remembers that freedom is worth dying for. Through the medical bay window, they could see ships from dozens of different worlds arriving to hear Kang Min's testimony. News crews, government officials, historians, and ordinary citizens who wanted to hear the truth about their galaxy's hidden history. Are you ready for this? Minho asked. Kang Min stood up slowly, his enhanced muscles moving with the careful grace of someone who had learned to carry an impossible burden. I've been ready for 3,000 years. The truth spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within days, every major news network was broadcasting Kang Min's testimony. His memories, extracted and verified by dozens of independent sources, played on screens in millions. Of homes across thousands of worlds, the reaction was swift and powerful. On some planets, people took to the streets demanding answers from their governments. On others, emergency sessions of planetary councils were called to discuss what this revelation meant for their societies. The peaceful, stable galaxy that everyone had known was suddenly full of questions and anger. Kang Min found himself at the center of the biggest political crisis in galactic history. He was moved to a secure facility on the capital world, where he spent his days giving interviews, testifying before government committees, and sharing his people's story with anyone who would listen. The hardest part, he told Sunmi during one of her visits, is watching people realize that their entire understanding of history was wrong. Some of them get angry at me, as if I'm responsible for the lies they were told. Sunmi had requested to be assigned as his personal physician, and Admiral Minho had agreed. She was one of the few people Kang Min trusted completely. They're not really angry at you. They're angry at themselves for believing the lies for so long. I know. But it still hurts to see. Not everyone believed Kang Min's story, despite the overwhelming evidence. Some politicians and historians claimed that the records had been fabricated, that the whole thing was an elaborate hoax designed to destabilize the government. They pointed out that it was convenient for an enemy of the state to appear just when certain political factions wanted to challenge the current system. But their arguments fell apart under scientific scrutiny. The genetic evidence was impossible to fake. The historical records matched perfectly with archaeological findings that had been ignored for centuries. Most importantly, Kang Min's neural implants contained information that no one alive could have known. Dr. So Young led a team of researchers who spent months analyzing every piece of evidence. Their final report was devastating to the official version of history. There is no doubt, she announced at a press conference that was watched by billions of people. The human species was systematically exterminated by the Valkyrian Empire. This was not a civil war or self-destruction. This was genocide, carried out over nearly 50 years with the specific goal of eliminating humanity completely. The political consequences were immediate. 3 planetary governments fell when it was revealed that their founding documents contained language directly copied from Valkyrian Empire laws. Several major corporations were exposed as having been built on wealth stolen from human colonies. The entire legal foundation of galactic civilization came under question, but there were positive changes too. A new field of study emerged, dedicated to recovering the lost history of humanity and their allies. Archaeological expeditions were launched to human colony worlds, searching for artifacts and records that had been hidden or ignored. Universities began offering courses on human culture, science, and philosophy. Most importantly, a memorial was established on the capital world. It was a simple black wall with the names of every human colony that had been destroyed, every ship that had been lost, every family that had been erased from history. At the top, in letters that could be seen from orbit, were the words that Kang Min had requested. They died as they lived, free, defiant, and unbroken. Kang Min visited the memorial often. Sometimes he would stand there for hours reading the names and remembering the people behind them. Visitors would approach him quietly, wanting to hear about the humans who had lived and died thousands of years before they were born. What were they really like? A young girl asked him one day. She was maybe 10 years old with bright eyes full of curiosity. Kang Min knelt down to her level. They were like you, he said, curious about everything, always asking questions, always wanting to know more about the universe around them. Were they brave? Very brave, but they were also scared sometimes. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do what's right even when you are scared. The girl nodded solemnly, then ran back to her parents. Conversations like this one happened every day at the memorial. Kang Min had become not just a witness to history, but a teacher, helping people understand what his species had really been like. Not everyone was happy with the changes. There were protests and violence on some worlds as people struggled to accept the new version of history. Some groups called for Kang Min to be silenced, claiming that his testimony was causing too much social disruption. Admiral Minho, who had become something of a friend to Kang Min, offered him protection. We can relocate you to a safer world, if you want, somewhere quiet, where you can live peacefully. No, Kang Min replied. I didn't survive 3,000 years to hide now. My people died so that someone would remember them correctly. As long as there are people who want to hear their story, I'll keep telling it. The changes weren't just political. Scientists began studying human technology that had been preserved in Kang Min's neural implants. Much of it was more advanced than current galactic technology, despite being thousands of years old. Medical techniques that could have saved millions of lives had been lost when humanity was destroyed. Scientific discoveries that could have advanced civilization by centuries had been buried with their creators. We set ourselves back by millennia, Dr. Yansu told a scientific conference. By destroying humanity, we didn't just commit genocide. We robbed the entire galaxy of the knowledge and innovations that humans would have contributed over the past 3,000 years. Kang Min found this particularly hard to accept. All those people who died from diseases that my people had already learned to cure, he said to Sunmi. All those problems that could have been solved with human science. The Empire didn't just kill us. They killed everyone who would have been saved by our knowledge. But there was hope too. Young people across the galaxy were inspired by the story of human resistance. They formed groups dedicated to fighting injustice and protecting the rights of smaller civilizations. They called themselves the Defiant, in honor of the humans who had refused to surrender. Museums began displaying human artifacts that had been hidden in storage for centuries. Art galleries showed human paintings and sculptures that revealed a species with incredible creativity and emotional depth. Libraries collected human literature that had been preserved in fragments and pieced it back together. The galaxy was learning about humanity not just as victims of genocide, but as a remarkable civilization that had contributed beauty, knowledge, and courage to the universe. 5 years after his awakening, Kang Min stood before the Galactic Assembly, the governing body that represented every world in known space. He was older now, his hair showing streaks of gray, but his eyes still held the determination that had sustained him for 3 millennia. I am not here to demand punishment for ancient crimes, he told the assembled representatives. The people who ordered my species' destruction are long dead. I am here to ask for something simpler and more important. Memory. Remember that freedom is not free. Remember that courage is not the absence of fear, but action in spite of fear. Remember that truth survives even when everything else is destroyed. Remember that some things are worth dying for. Most of all, remember the humans who refused to surrender. Remember that they faced impossible odds and chose to fight anyway. Remember that they believed the universe was worth saving, even when the universe wanted them dead. The Assembly voted unanimously to establish the Human Remembrance Day, an annual celebration of human culture and resistance. Schools across the galaxy would teach about human history, art, and science. The story of humanity's last stand would be preserved forever. After the vote, Kang Min walked out of the assembly building into a crowd of thousands of people who had come to thank him. There were humans among them, clones created from the genetic material in his DNA, the first new humans to be born in 3,000 years. But Kang Min had made it clear that these new humans were not his people. They were something new, free, to create their own culture and identity without the burden of the past. His people were the ones who had died fighting. His job was to remember them, not to replace them. Standing there in the crowd, surrounded by beings from dozens of different worlds, Kang Min felt something he hadn't experienced in 3,000 years. Peace. Not the peace of rest, but the peace of a job well done. His people's story had been told. Their courage had been recognized. Their sacrifice had meaning. He was no longer the last human. He was something better. The keeper of their memory, the voice of their defiance, and the proof that truth can survive anything. In the years that followed, Kang Min continued to travel the galaxy, speaking to anyone who would listen. He lived to see the establishment of the Human Heritage Foundation, the creation of memorial parks on dozens of worlds, and the emergence of a new generation of leaders inspired by human ideals of freedom and resistance. When he finally died, peacefully in his sleep at the age of over 3,000 years, his funeral was attended by millions of beings from across the galaxy.